step-by-step guide to strategic AI implementation.
Okay, nice to see you, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. My name's Emma Blaylock. I'm CEO of Pretty Technical. We're a software business in the iGaming space. And the talk today is around a step-by-step guide to strategic AI implementation. Hot topic. I know a lot of you are probably thinking about it or maybe have some implementation projects underway. So hopefully I've got a few tips here that may be helpful. Firstly, I wanted to know, there was a recent study by McKinsey showing that almost 75% of businesses are using AI in some form today. That's up from 66% last year, 50% the year before, and actually that was flat, 50% for the last 6 years before that. So basically, if you're not using AI already, you're behind the curve, right? You need to be looking at it, need to be thinking about how you can implement it and what value that can bring to your business. Also, I think interestingly, analytical AI, which is what we may have in the past typically thought of when we considered AI, is no longer the leading form of AI that's adopted. Generative AI, where you're creating content using AI prompts to create content, is now the leading form of AI that is being deployed by businesses. When we speak to businesses, the key kind of barriers that we hear as to why adoption of AI is not being used as much potentially as it could be, the main reason that comes up is being able to demonstrate the value of those projects. How do we measure that? How do we make sure we're getting an ROI on our AI implementation? And sorry. And that's stopping a lot of businesses. So hopefully this talk here will give you a few things to think about around that. Okay, so step one. I think before you get started on anything, it's really important to clearly define what are your objectives from using AI. And those need to be measurable, right? So think about how you're going to track those, what KPIs you're going to use. I've got some examples here. Money being an obvious one. In the iGaming space, if you think like a couple of examples around that would be, predictive CRM. So looking at player behavior, thinking about how you can target offers to players based on their behavior in a personalized way. That can drive revenue and ultimately hit the bottom line. So, maybe that's one of the objectives. Or maybe from a money perspective, it also could be preventative, like fraud detection, things like that. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's people engagement. Talked about CRM there. I mean, other types of engagement would be on the responsible gaming side, looking at player behavior, working with those players to help them make good choices around their gaming behavior. Or maybe it's chatbots and how they interact with the players and doing that in a way that is very tailored to each player and learns from what they're saying. Efficiency. So at Pretty Technical, when we develop code, we actually use AI already in terms of testing and looking at the quality of our code. So we use various tools to look at how we could improve the code, where it might be vulnerable to attacks, or just basically efficiencies in that code. We don't yet use it to write our code. We use prompt-driven AI to think about, kind of help us with our thinking and saying if we're being most efficient, but that's the kind of next step, right, that may come for us. Enterprise value. Okay, all of these three things here previously, money, people engagement, efficiency, they all kind of help enterprise value. But I wanted to add that as an objective because, think about the shareholders, think about your investors. Are they looking at you and the value of your company in terms of what you're doing with AI and how you're using it more effectively? Something to think about. The last reason is fun, right? Experiment, try some things, see what you can do. It may be that you don't know all of the use cases for AI right now, and I'd be very surprised if anyone does for how you're going to use it in your organization. But try some things, see what comes of it, and see where it leads you. Step 2, I've called this, it's all about the data, because this is key to any kind of AI implementation. Think about the data. Where are you going to get that data from? Where are your data sources? Are you going to need to create the data? Do you have it in your internal systems? Are you going to get it externally? If you're going to get it, well, regardless of where you're going to get it, you need to think about the privacy concerns around that data. Are there any privacy concerns? Are there any compliance issues you need to think around that data? Think about the quality of the data. Is it clean? Does it need cleaning? How reliable is it? How accurate is that data? I'm going to show you an example here. I put a prompt in into Midjourney and give it the prompt, show me a picture of iGaming people in Malta on a cruise. And this is what it gave me. It's based on the data set it gets. And if you look at that, first of all, maybe that is representative. I would say that's not necessarily representative of the iGaming industry and the people in it. It's very similar in terms of the people it's chosen, but it's only as good as the data it's trained on. I think also, thinking about the accuracy, how good is that data? In here, if you zoom in, you can see that some of these faces do not look like faces, right? I'm not sure what it's done, but they look very, very strange in terms of some of the face images they've got there. Now, that's very easy for us to see in this data, but when you think about the data sources you're using, it may not be so obvious. So thinking about the accuracy of data, really key. The panel previously, I think, made also a very good point around data and thinking about the explainability of decisions. That may be really important, not just the output, but how was that decision made and what was it based on, and being able to trace that back. So again, I think another thing around data, explainability may be key there. Finally, I think also think about whether you want to use a kind of a walled garden data model. So in one of our sister companies, they actually have their own kind of private data model. They're using it to create marketing content, but by that, it already knows what their tone of voice is going to be, what kind of imagery they want to use. So any kind of content comes from that data model, and that may be useful. Step 3, okay, execute. I said this earlier, actually, but I think the key thing here is no one yet, we're just at the beginning stages of AI, so no one yet knows all the use cases and what will be the most valuable. Experiment, try stuff, don't be afraid. Think about things in what we would call a minimum viable product way. Experiment, get something out there, see how it works, learn from that, go from there. Don't be afraid and don't kind of hold yourself back from exploring. Next, think about the tools and technologies you're going to use. There's a number of tools and technologies out there. They're all good for different things. Think about that and think about where you're going to get the talent from that's going to be able to implement these tools and technologies, not just now, but going forward. Develop the data models, work with data scientists, build out your models. And as I mentioned, on the previous slide, think about those data sources and where that comes from. Finally, when you're up and running, monitor, iterate, learn, build upon your AI project. Look at the KPIs that you set out at the beginning around your objectives. Monitor against that. See what works, what doesn't, and learn from that. And finally, you should think about this all the way through, really, but the change management. So what I mean by here is, if you're using AI, for example, integrating that into a process within your organization, think about the people that are going to be using that. think about the impact on them, think about the team, and how are you going to bring them on that journey? Because if they're not supportive, it won't be a success. My final point here is really, like, don't be afraid of AI. I heard an analogy recently that I really like in terms of where this is going. Rather than thinking of AI as the Terminator, really cool tech, potentially a bit scary, think about it as Iron Man. You know, very powerful technology operated by people underneath. And I think that really shows you kind of what you can do. So thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, I'm around at the conference. I've got my LinkedIn profile on the QR code here, but please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.